Before he was a convicted felon, NFL star quarterback Michael Vick was secretly running a brutal dogfighting ring on his own property in Virginia. For years, he and his associates bred pit bulls for violent, high-stakes fights, and when the dogs underperformed, they were tortured and killed in some of the most sadistic ways imaginable. Vick admitted to personally helping drown, beat, hang, shoot, and even electrocute dogs to death. One of the most disturbing methods involved clipping jumper cables to a dog's body and lowering it into a shallow pool of water until the animal died in agony. When the operation was finally exposed, Vick served 23 months in prison, losing his career, endorsements, and nearly $100 million. Over 70 dogs were rescued from the compound, many scarred for life and too damaged to recover, though some were rehabilitated and adopted into loving homes. Despite Vick's eventual return to the NFL and carefully staged public apologies, the cruelty he oversaw left a permanent stain on his legacy. On July 14, 2017, Chester Bennington appeared in a carpool karaoke episode with comedian Ken Jeong. In the video, Chester looks joyful and full of life, laughing, cracking jokes, and singing along to Linkin Park hits as well as popular songs like Hey Ya. The footage offers a bittersweet glimpse of a man who appeared to be genuinely happy just 6 days before he tragically took his own life. In 1993, a Mexican zoo official was arrested in Miami after trying to illegally purchase a live gorilla, only to discover the animal was actually an undercover agent in a gorilla suit. The operation was part of a federal wildlife trafficking bust and led to one of the most ridiculous arrests in American history. As a child in the Philippines, boxing legend Manny Pacquiao ran away from home after witnessing a horrifying act. His father, drunk and enraged, killed and ate the family's pet dog. Devastated, Pacquiao fled and began living on the streets, sleeping in a cardboard box and surviving by selling donuts and scraps. The trauma of watching that happen to his beloved pet pushed him into a life of brutal survival at just 12 years old, an early glimpse of the hardship and violence that would define his relentless drive in the ring. In the 1990s, Belgium was shaken by the horrific case of Marc Dutroux, a convicted predator who, after early release from prison, built a hidden soundproof dungeon beneath his home. In 1995, he kidnapped 2 8-year-old girls named Julie and Melissa and locked them inside the chamber. Later that year, he was jailed for several months after stealing a car and left the girls trapped in the basement. Dutroux claimed he told his wife to feed them, but she never did, and the girls slowly starved to death in total darkness. When police finally searched the home 1 year later, they found their bodies buried in the yard along with 2 more victims, teenage girls that Dutroux had drugged, abused, and murdered. Investigators had previously searched the home but missed the hidden cell, ignoring repeated warnings and reports of screams from neighbors. The public was completely outraged as over 300,000 people marched silently through Brussels in what became known as the White March, Belgium's largest protest since World War II. In January of 2024, 29-year-old Nolan Arbaugh became the first human to receive a Neuralink brain implant after being paralyzed in a diving accident. Though the surgery was celebrated as a milestone, things quickly unraveled. 85% of the device's threads retracted from his brain, crippling its function. Neuralink scrambled to deploy emergency software fixes just to keep it working, allowing Nolan to play chess and move a cursor with his thoughts. The surgery carried serious risks including infection, brain damage, and long-term complications. Arbaugh's implant was never removed, and the company hasn't disclosed the full extent of its ongoing effects. In 2017, retired U.S. Army Colonel David Will Riggins was awarded $8.4 million in a defamation lawsuit after a woman publicly accused him of raping her decades earlier when they were cadets at West Point. Just as Riggins was being considered for promotion as Brigadier General, the accusation was posted on a blog, effectively derailing his military career. But an investigation soon found no supporting evidence, and a Virginia jury later determined the woman's claims were provably false. Although the final payout was reduced to around $2.3 million, Riggins said he was grateful to have his name cleared, even if the damage to his career couldn't be undone. In 2013, Caleb McGilvery, aka Kai the hatchet-wielding hitchhiker, went viral after a wild TV interview where he described stopping an attacker with a hatchet, shouting, "Smash! Smash! Smash!" But just a few months later, he was arrested for the murder of 73-year-old lawyer Joseph Galfy in New Jersey. Galfy was found beaten to death in his own home, as Kai had reportedly punched, kicked, and stomped him until he died. Kai claimed it was self-defense after being drugged and sexually assaulted, but prosecutors said there was no evidence in his favor. He was convicted of first-degree murder in 2019 and sentenced to 57 years in prison. In 2014, Jose Salvador Alvarenga was rescued after surviving 438 days lost at sea, a journey that began when his fishing boat was blown off course in Mexico. He drifted over 6,000 miles across the Pacific in a small boat, surviving by eating raw fish, turtles, and seabirds, while drinking rainwater, turtle blood, and his own pee. When he finally washed ashore in the Marshall Islands, he was sunburnt, emaciated, and clutching a knife in terror. Though his story was initially met with skepticism, experts later confirmed it was entirely plausible, setting the record for the longest solo survival at sea by far. In July of 2023, Australian woman Erin Patterson invited her ex-in-laws and their relatives over for lunch, serving them a homemade beef Wellington laced with one of the deadliest fungi on Earth, death cap mushrooms. Within a few days, 3 of them were dead from agonizing organ failure, and a 4th barely survived after a liver transplant. Patterson claimed it was a tragic accident, but investigators found damning evidence, including a food dehydrator tied to the poison and inconsistent stories about where the mushrooms came from. She was recently convicted of 3 counts of murder and likely faces life in prison. In the mid-1800s, women across the Western world wore massive crinolines, hoop skirts that ballooned outward in all directions, often made from highly flammable fabrics like cotton. The size made them elegant but deadly. They caught fire easily near candles or fireplaces, and the sheer width made them nearly impossible to escape the flames. Within just 2 months in 1863, 19 English women burnt to death after their dresses caught fire. By the end of the decade, more than 3,000 people had died as a result of crinoline fires. In 2020, Canadian actor Ryan Grantham, known for his roles in Riverdale and Diary of a Wimpy Kid, shot and killed his 64-year-old mother while she was playing piano in their home, then filmed the aftermath on a GoPro. Grantham then packed his car with guns, ammunition, Molotov cocktails, and a map to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's residence, allegedly planning to assassinate him. But instead, he drove to a police station and turned himself in. During the trial, it was revealed that Grantham was suffering from severe depression and suicidal thoughts. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole in 14 years. In 1988, expert skydiver Ivan McGuire boarded a plane in North Carolina to film a routine jump from 10,000 feet. With over 800 jumps under his belt, he was calm, confident, and fully focused on capturing the perfect footage. His helmet camera recorded everything: his smooth exit from the plane, the free fall, and the other jumpers floating below. But partway through the descent, McGuire began frantically patting his back, expressing confusion that quickly turned to panic. Just seconds before impact, his voice can be heard yelling, "Oh my God, no!" He was apparently so focused on filming that he had jumped without a parachute. In 2014, comedian Tracy Morgan was critically injured in a car crash on the New Jersey Turnpike when a Walmart tractor-trailer suddenly slammed into his limo van. The collision killed his close friend and fellow comedian James McNair and left Morgan with a broken femur, broken ribs, broken nose, and a traumatic brain injury. Doctors initially feared he might not survive, and he remained in a coma for over a week. The truck driver had reportedly been awake for more than 24 hours, prompting Morgan to sue Walmart for negligence. The company ultimately settled the lawsuit outside of court, and Tracy has publicly forgiven the driver. In 1980, a man named John Burgess, who had lost over $750,000 while gambling, attempted to extort money from Harvey's Resort Hotel in Nevada by planting one of the most sophisticated homemade bombs the FBI had ever seen. Disguised as a copy machine and weighing over 1,000 pounds, the device was placed on the second floor of the casino along with a ransom note demanding $3 million. The FBI evacuated the building and spent hours trying to disarm the bomb, but when they attempted to disable it using a controlled charge, the entire device detonated. The explosion damaged much of the building and caused over $18 million in damage, but miraculously no one was killed. Burgess was later arrested, convicted, and died while in prison. In Dante's Inferno, hell is divided into 9 circles, each one reserved for a specific sin. Today we take a tour of these 9 circles with real-life stories to match. Jean Meslier was a Catholic priest for 40 years, known for his extensive charity work and devotion. But after his death in 1729, a hidden 633-page manuscript revealed that he had secretly been an atheist the entire time. He admitted to becoming a priest only to please his parents, called religion a castle in the air, and condemned faith as a tool of oppression. Tamika Hargrave died while cheating on her husband with her car mechanic. They were getting it on inside of a closed garage while the car was still running and eventually passed out from carbon monoxide. Their unclothed bodies were later found by Tamika's husband. In 2004, Gail Laverne Grimes died in the hospital after doctors spent 6 exhausting hours trying to separate her skin from a couch. The 500-pound woman had been sitting on her living room sofa for 6 years to the point where her skin had completely fused to the fabric. Rescue workers had to transport Gail and her couch using a trailer, and she ended up dying while still attached to it. Known as the Witch of Wall Street, Hetty Green was once the richest woman in America. But she became infamous for her overly obsessive frugality. She refused to pay for heat, medical care, or clean clothes. Her son's leg once had to be amputated because she delayed treatment while searching for a free clinic. Hetty eventually died from a stroke while arguing over the cost of skim milk. In 1982, South Korean police officer Woo Bum Khan went on one of the deadliest killing rampages in world history. After his girlfriend woke him up by swatting a fly that was on his chest, he armed himself with rifles, grenades, and a service revolver, then spent the entire night moving from village to village, posing as a cop while massacring civilians in their homes. He cut phone lines, lobbed grenades into houses, and shot entire families in their sleep. By dawn, 56 people were dead and dozens more were injured. As police closed in, he ended the fury by taking his own life. Jim Jones began as a fiery Christian preacher with a passion for social justice. But behind the scenes, he rejected the Bible, called himself the reincarnation of Jesus, Buddha, and Lenin, and claimed true salvation could only be achieved through him. In 1978, he led over 900 followers, including 300 children, to a remote jungle in Guyana where they were forced to take their own lives. Their bodies were found piled in rows with their faces blue and arms entwined, proof of what happens when a heretic convinces others that he's a god. Serial killer Richard Ramirez quite literally made violence his religion. Breaking into homes at random, he often restrained entire families and carried out horrifying acts in front of them, designed to mentally and physically destroy his victims in their final moments. In multiple cases, he forced his victims to swear allegiance to the devil before killing them, and left pentagrams drawn across walls and even carved into his victim's skin. In one case, the sadistic killer gouged out a woman's eyes while she was still breathing. His crimes weren't just brutal, they were ritualistic expressions of chaos, cruelty, and complete devotion to evil. For nearly 18 years, Frenchman Jean-Claude Roman pretended to be a successful doctor with the WHO despite never graduating from medical school. He lived off of money from family and friends, claiming he was investing it into elite hedge funds. But in 1993, as his elaborate web of lies began to unravel, Roman chose mass murder over being exposed. He bludgeoned his wife to death with a rolling pin, shot his 2 children in the head, then calmly joined his parents for lunch before killing them and their dog. Roman was arrested and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 1996, 16-year-old Travis Lewis pleaded guilty to the murder of Sally McKay. While seeking closure, Sally's daughter Martha visited Travis several times while he was in prison, eventually forgiving him for killing her mother. When he got out on parole 23 years later, Martha allowed Travis to move in with her and gave her a job as groundskeeper of her estate. But when she discovered the man was frequently stealing from her, Martha fired Travis and kicked him out. Soon afterwards, Travis broke into Martha's house and stabbed her to death before drowning in a nearby lake while on the run from police. Mexican painter Frida Kahlo's life was a haunting mix of brilliance and suffering. After contracting polio at age 6, classmates called her Frida the Cripple. At 18, she was nearly killed when a steel handrail impaled her during a bus crash, entering through her pelvis and exiting her abdomen. Her spine, pelvis, collarbone, and foot were completely shattered. She endured over 30 brutal surgeries, spent months in body casts, and painted while bedridden. Frida later suffered 5 to 7 miscarriages as a result, with one nearly killing her from blood loss. And she captured the horror in disturbing works like Henry Ford Hospital, showing herself naked, bleeding, and surrounded by a floating fetus and surgical tools. Later on, gangrene took her leg, only deepening her depression. She filled her diary with dark images and wrote, "I am not sick, I am broken." Though officially ruled a pulmonary embolism, many believe she intentionally overdosed at 47. Her final diary entry read, "I hope the exit is joyful, and I hope to never return." Ted Cassidy, best known for playing Lurch in the original Addams Family, was 6 feet 9 inches tall. He died from a botched surgery to remove a tumor from his heart, which resulted from the condition of acromegaly that caused his iconic voice, facial structure, and towering height. After leasing the World Trade Center just weeks before 9/11, Larry Silverstein filed an insurance claim arguing that the attacks on the Twin Towers constituted 2 separate terrorist events, entitling him to double the $3.5 billion per occurrence payout. The case went to court, where the court agreed with Silverstein for 9 of the 20 insurance companies, forcing them to pay double. In total, Silverstein received around $4.55 billion for the collapse of the World Trade Center. In 1991, 5 young boys vanished while searching for salamander eggs on a mountain in South Korea, earning them the nickname the Frog Boys. Despite a massive nationwide search, their remains weren't discovered until 2002, just a few miles from where they disappeared. Initially ruled as deaths by exposure, an autopsy revealed that 4 boys had suffered blunt force trauma to the head and 1 had a gunshot wound. Even more unsettling, their clothes were found tied together with bullets wrapped in them. The site was suspiciously close to a military training zone, but police refused to investigate any military involvement. No one has been held accountable to this day. In 2006, Ray Rivera vanished after receiving a sudden phone call and rushing out of his Baltimore home. Over a week later, his body was found in a locked conference room at the Belvedere Hotel, having somehow crashed through the roof from above. The hole he fell through was bizarrely placed, far too distant from any ledge to be reached by a typical jump, leading some to believe he may have been thrown off the roof or pushed from a higher level of the building. Even stranger, a cryptic note filled with movie references and secret society names was discovered taped behind his computer. The eerie case still remains officially unsolved. Just recently, paranormal investigator Dan Rivera was found dead in his hotel room while on the Devils on the Run tour in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Best known for touring with the infamous Annabelle doll from The Conjuring, the 54-year-old had spent years investigating haunted locations and was a prominent figure in the New England Society for Psychic Research. His sudden death with no signs of foul play has fueled eerie speculation, given his close proximity to one of the world's most notorious possessed objects. As of now, the cause of death remains unknown, as Rivera's mysterious end has only deepened the legend surrounding Annabelle. At SummerSlam 1997, Stone Cold Steve Austin suffered a serious neck injury after Owen Hart botched a reverse piledriver, slamming Austin's head directly into the mat. The impact caused a bruised spinal cord and temporary paralysis, leaving Austin unable to move. He immediately told Hart, "Don't touch me, I can't move," and relayed the same to the referee, who signaled Owen to stall for time. Austin eventually regained just enough movement to finish the match with a weak roll-up. Though he continued wrestling, the injury forced Austin to abandon his technical style, and chronic neck issues ultimately led to his early retirement in 2003. Shock back-to-back incidents helped solidify the piledriver's reputation as one of wrestling's most dangerous moves and led to stricter safety protocols in the WWE. On July 17, 2025, Felix Baumgartner, the daredevil who once broke the sound barrier by jumping from the edge of space, was killed in a tragic paragliding crash in Italy at the age of 56. While piloting a motorized paraglider near a seaside resort, he reportedly may have suffered a cardiac event mid-air, causing the craft to spiral out of control before slamming into the hotel's pool area. The impact killed him instantly and injured a hotel worker with flying debris, sending her to the hospital with neck trauma, but she appears to be okay. Witnesses described a terrifying boom as the glider hit, followed by screams from stunned vacationers. Paramedics arrived quickly but were unable to revive him, and guests at the hotel were left stunned as rescue workers covered his body with a tarp near the wreckage. Hours before the fatal crash, he posted an Instagram story with the caption, "Too much wind," his eerie final message before the legendary thrill-seeker met a brutal end while doing what he loved. Pamela Anderson contracted hepatitis C in the 90s after sharing a tattoo needle with her husband Tommy Lee, who never told her he had the deadly virus. Doctors warned her it could kill her within 10 years, and the virus slowly attacked her liver, while she suffered from chronic fatigue, weakness, and bouts of depression. At her lowest, she described feeling like her body was rotting from the inside, as the disease forced her out of the spotlight and into isolation. For over a decade, she lived with the fear of cancer or liver failure, until she was finally cured in 2015 by a breakthrough antiviral treatment. In 2004, 7-year-old Tyler Moon became a walking miracle after a horrific quad crash left both he and his father critically injured in the Australian bush. Despite suffering 2 collapsed lungs filling with blood, 7 broken ribs, and a shattered arm, the boy staggered for nearly a kilometer through dense forest to reach help. When he finally reached his mother's house, he managed to say, "Dad said you should call an ambulance," before collapsing on the ground. Doctors said it was a miracle that Tyler survived at all, let alone saved someone else's life in the process. Young actor Cameron Boyce tragically died in his sleep on July 6, 2019 at just 20 years old from a seizure caused by epilepsy, a condition he'd been managing with treatment. His death was officially ruled as SUDEP, sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, a little-known fatal complication that occurs without warning, most commonly during sleep. Cameron had reportedly experienced only about 5 seizures throughout his life, all while sleeping, and his family had never even heard of SUDEP until after his sudden death. He was found unresponsive in his North Hollywood home, and there was nothing that paramedics could do once they arrived. Cameron had spent much of his young life fighting for others, raising millions to bring clean water to Africa, supporting homeless shelters, and using his platform to speak out against gun violence. In the wake of the tragedy, his family founded the Cameron Boyce Foundation to raise awareness about epilepsy and SUDEP, hoping to prevent others from suffering the same fate. In April of 2024, fitness influencer Joey Swoll faced a terrifying near-death experience during what was supposed to be a routine 30-minute heart test. While undergoing an angiogram, a piece of medical equipment broke off inside his heart, causing him to crash mid-procedure. Doctors had to perform a 6-hour emergency surgery to remove the foreign object and stabilize him, even resorting to implanting a heart pump to keep him alive. The lead surgeon described the situation as unprecedented and miraculous, saying Joey came dangerously close to dying on the table. Here's a terrifying video of a diver encountering a candiru fish and clenching his knees for good reason. These spiny parasitic fish have been rumored to swim up human urethras, latching on with barbed spines and requiring extremely painful surgery to remove. While dissecting the donated body of a 78-year-old man, medical students were stunned to find he had not one, not two, but 3 tallywhackers. The 2 extras were tiny, tucked-away trouser snakes hiding deep in his beanbag. But since they were completely hidden and non-functional, there's a good chance the guy went his whole life unaware he was packing a secret sausage trio. In 2007, Miles Teller narrowly survived a horrific car crash when the vehicle he was inside of flipped 8 times at nearly 80 miles per hour, ejecting him through a window and flinging his body over 30 feet. He was found unconscious and covered in blood, with deep facial gashes and a broken wrist, injuries that required years of painful laser treatments. As if that weren't enough, within the next year, Miles lost 2 of his closest friends in separate vehicle accidents just weeks apart. One was killed in a motorcycle crash and the other in a car accident. Both devastating losses that deeply affected Teller in his early 20s. As a result, the actor developed a profound sense of gratitude and now takes nothing for granted, an outlook that deeply influences both his personal life and career. In 1992, Annette Herfkens was the sole survivor of a plane crash that killed all 30 others on board, including her fiancé. The aircraft went down in the remote Vietnamese jungle just 50 minutes into the flight. Trapped inside the mangled wreckage with a collapsed lung, broken ribs, and surrounded by rotting corpses, she was too injured to leave the crash site. For 8 days, she fought to stay alive by drinking rainwater as the stench of death closed in. As her body weakened, she even considered cannibalizing the bodies around her, but didn't have the strength for it. When rescuers finally arrived, she was barely conscious, buried in wreckage and decay next to the corpse of the love of her life, but she eventually made a full recovery. Dan Bilzerian, once dubbed the king of Instagram, built his online image around guns, women, and money, but his real-life track record is much darker. He's been sued for tossing an adult film actress off a roof and shattering her foot, allegedly kicked a woman in the face during a nightclub brawl, and was arrested on bomb-making charges after causing an open fire in Nevada. He also suffered 2 heart attacks before the age of 28, reportedly triggered by a cocktail of drugs including cocaine, ecstasy, and Viagra taken during non-stop parties. In interviews, he's admitted to nearly dying multiple times from drug overdoses and claims his heart had temporarily stopped at least once. He was present during the 2017 Las Vegas mass shooting, where he fled the scene, returned to film bodies, and bizarrely asked police for a gun. On the business front, his company Ignite faced financial scrutiny as he sued his own father over alleged mismanagement tied to a $180 million fraud case. Today, Bilzerian lives in relative obscurity compared to his peak fame, his story now seen by many as proof that money, fame, and indulgence don't always add up to a perfect life. In 1994, FedEx flight engineer Auburn Calloway boarded Flight 705 with a guitar case. Inside were 2 claw hammers, a spear gun, and a plan to murder the crew. Facing termination for lying about his flight hours, he knew FedEx's life insurance would still pay out if he died in a workplace accident. So his plan was to bludgeon the pilots to death mid-air, crash the plane, and make it look like a mechanical failure, so that his ex-wife and kids could collect the payout. Once airborne, he ambushed the crew, cracking skulls and severing arteries with hammer blows. One pilot lost half his blood, while another had his face crushed and nearly lost an eye as Calloway tried to gouge it out. But bleeding out and barely conscious, the pilots fought back, rolling the plane 140 degrees to disorient him and eventually beating him into submission. When paramedics boarded, they found the rear of the cockpit drenched in blood. Calloway was sentenced to life in prison without parole, and none of the pilots ever flew commercially again. Best known for her role on Modern Family, Sarah Hyland has undergone 2 kidney transplants and over a dozen surgeries due to a life-threatening condition called kidney dysplasia. While filming the show, she would often hold herself together just long enough to finish a scene, only to collapse in pain as soon as the camera stopped rolling. After her first kidney transplant failed, she spiraled into depression and revealed she had actively planned for her suicide, feeling like a burden to those around her. For years, she quietly endured chronic pain, medication side effects, and body image issues, all while playing the role of a bubbly sitcom star. In 2017, a petty argument over a $2 Call of Duty wager spiraled into a fatal tragedy. After 2 gamers got into a dispute, one of them enlisted a known swatter to call in a fake hostage situation at an address in Wichita, Kansas. But the address given wasn't even the other players. It belonged to 28-year-old Andrew Finch, an innocent man with no connection to the game. When Finch stepped outside to see what was happening, a police sniper shot him dead within seconds despite Finch being unarmed. The swatter, Tyler Barris, was later sentenced to 20 years in prison, and the city eventually paid Finch's family $5 million.